This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The Eagles offseasons never seem to be ordinary. And Adam Caplan, co-host of the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can find on any podcasting platform or on their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. He joins me now as the Eagles offseason is here, and the bigger story is Sirianni's meeting with the owner, and we'll find out, is he safe? We don't have any news or indication of how that meeting went yet. Do we think we'll have an answer by the end of the day? Is this something Lurie's going to kind of sit on? How are you on this fine Friday there, Adam Caplan?
Mike, yeah, I'm well. We got snow out here in Chester County here in Pennsylvania, so I got to go out tonight. I have somewhere I have to appear, so I have to get on the road. I'm not looking forward to that, but looking forward to talking about the Eagles. Mike, it's really interesting. I swear it seems like yesterday. You and I were talking. I probably was a Friday segment. I'd have to go look at my notes, but in our reporting here at Inside the Birds, there was all this, Doug Peterson's safe, and we didn't react. We said on our show that morning, Peterson's either in or out depending on how the meeting goes with the owner. It didn't go well, so the owner gave him another chance at another meeting. It didn't go well, and then he was fired. So anyone saying that Sirianni's safe doesn't really know what's going on. The owner doesn't want to fire him. It's all about the plan. Does the owner approve the plan or not? It's really that simple. There's no midway. There's no maybe or we'll see. It's does he approve it or not? There's no middle ground here. So we broke this down, Mike, for about an hour today on our show. We broke it down every scenario. We gave you everything that we know about the situation, what kind of staff that they're looking, the revised staff that Nick's going to put together here, if he's the head coach. It's one thing to go into this expecting to be the head coach, but it's another thing that what does the owner think? And that we've tried to convince people, folks, ignore speculation. It's all about what Jeffrey thinks, and that's all that matters.
So what does Jeffrey want to hear?
It's a good question. It's actually a great question. Okay. So let me go into what happened exactly 3 years ago with Doug Peterson. Jeffrey wanted to bring Doug back, but what Doug knew was he was prepped. We were told then, and I remember this like it was yesterday. Peterson was prepped for the meeting. He told him, make sure that you've got a revised coaching staff. Your pick for offense coordinator will not be acceptable. He still went with it, and Lurie said no, he had some other changes. That's not what got him fired. What got him fired was his offense coordinator choice. Everybody knows it was Press Taylor. It's been well reported by us and others. And Press was under tremendous pressure with the Jaguars this season. It didn't go well when he called plays, but he was able to keep his job. But Doug fired over 10 coaches, by the way, on both sides of the football. But Doug's still the head coach of Jacksonville. But going back to 3 years ago, Mike, the owner wanted to have a good plan of guys who the problem with Press Taylor, Carson Wentz regressed, Nate Sudfeld regressed. I know it's on a smaller version, Mike, but he did, and that was the guy who was really working a lot with the quarterback. And he got knocked out. I mean, he that was the guy that was a big stumbling point in Doug keeping his job. That's not a secret, and you could call the situation whatever you want to call it, but facts are facts. If the owner does not believe that the quarterback's being developed, and by the way, Wentz is on a major regression, like terrible regression, as you know, he got benched, and the head coach had no answers. He didn't have good answers, and he lost his job after the 2020 season.
The Brian Johnson thing in this, he's getting interviews around the league, okay? So
Sure.
He's got 3 head coaching interviews. He's also, would you say, in peril of losing his job here? I mean, have you ever seen a situation where a guy is being respected enough around the league to possibly take over as their head coach, but could also lose the job he currently holds?
Well, Brian Billick, I remember this because I reported this back in, was it 2013? I don't have it here. It was 10 years ago, but I'm almost certain that, remember when Chip Kelly said no, he first said he wasn't going to take the job, and then he changed his mind. But in the interim, I'm almost certain they talked to Brian Billick, the former Ravens head coach, after he got fired. I'm pretty certain of that. So that would be a time when a guy gets fired, and but now he was, of course, a head coach then. But this one, look, Brian Johnson's still under contract. Mm-hmm. We know as a fact that they're looking into coordinator names. We gave you the coordinator names this morning, Moshe and I, with West Coast offensive background. That's what we're hearing, the guys that they're looking into. Now, what does this mean for Brian Johnson, on your question? Does this mean that he's out? Does this mean he'll be reassigned? Will he have a role? We don't know. I mean, it's not been decided. And by the way, a lot of the names that we've heard that they're looking into, these are guys who are not only are they under contract, some are still coaching. And who knows if they want to come here? Because think about this, Mike. As a coaching source told me earlier this week, if Sirianni stays, you know he's going to be in the major hot seat. And if you're a coach and want to come in here or think about it, are you going to move your family here knowing that you could be one and done here? Yeah. That's a factor, Mike.
Yeah, the West Coast background thing is interesting. That would assume that Sirianni would then basically cede any of his offense. So basically, hey, Jeffrey, I'm willing to turn my offensive philosophy over to someone else. See, I had thought throughout the day that he says, look, I've been running this offense. It's been my offense. Brian didn't get the chance to run his offense. Let's let him take over the offense.
Here's the problem, Mike. Yes, that is absolutely a fair point. Very good one. Here's the problem. Sirianni's running a meld of a couple systems. It's not a true West Coast. There's some true West Coast in it. There's some other systems in it. The system this season was an absolute dismal failure. Let's call it like it is, Mike. It was awful. It regressed over a series of weeks. Teams figured it out. I remember when Chip Kelly, I was talking to the players then in 2013, 2014. Chip never had a second act. Once they figured it out, he didn't know what to do. In fact, he was too stubborn. Now, I was talking to a coaching source very close to Nick, who's coaching with not here, but a guy coaching with at another stop. He said Nick absolutely will be open to changes. He goes, I know Nick well enough. This meeting should not be a problem. We'll see. I'm not convinced of that, but look, I don't know Nick. We'll see how it goes today, and if there are any other meetings over this, but the system didn't work this season. I don't care about 22, Mike. It doesn't matter. That happened last year. The system that he ran this season, which he claims is the same, didn't work. And see, this is what Jeffrey's got to ask, and Howie in this meeting today, and whoever else is in there. What tweak? Like, if you want the new OC to run your system, if you're going to hire a new OC, don't. What if they want to bring their new system in? That's another thing. If they're talking to these West Coast guys, right? If they do get some of these guys to interview, like Shane Waldron, by the way, who we believe will be on their list, who's the Seahawks coordinator, who's going to interview for some jobs. Well, he's got Shanahan in his background. This is completely different than the scheme they run here. How would you meld both? It would be hard to do. I don't see them hiring someone who won't be able to run their system. It'd be hard to run Nick's, to be honest with you.
Well, and like if I'm Brian Johnson, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, look, I'm calling plays for an offense that's not mine. That's like Adam Caplan handed me your playbook and said, Mike Gill, call my plays. And I said, I don't want to call your play. I don't like your plays. I want to call Mike Gill's play. Right. So,
Mike, I was just going to say, by the way, Matt Patricia did that. Matt Patricia stupidly, he should have done this. As explained to us by a coaching source, what you should do in a situation like this, whether you're calling the plays on offense or defense, you take the same defense, you take your package of plays that worked, you call them. You have your blitz packages. You look at all of them. You find ones that you're comfortable with, and you run them. You don't run your system. You can't do that in season. That was foolish by Patricia.
So what will it take in your mind for him to keep his job, and what will it take for him to lose his job? Like, do you think Lurie goes into this with an open mind? Does he lean one way? Is he saying, I really want to keep this guy? So, I mean, how can he be, pushed one way or the other here?
Another thing. So this was my feeling going into right after the game. If Sirianni is going to be out for sure, 100%, he's going to be out by Wednesday. You're not going to, because yes, the game ended late. They didn't get home to very early Tuesday morning. So you're either going to fire him Tuesday or Wednesday. That didn't happen. So that tells me that he'd like to keep him. That doesn't mean he's staying, though. Again, he wanted to keep Peterson 3 years ago. You know how that ended. So what does he have to do to keep his job? I don't think it'll work if he wants to revise his staff with just shuffle guys around with his staff who are currently on it. I don't see that happening. I just don't see Jeffrey agreeing to that. Jeffrey has got to feel comfortable that Nick and it's not just the list. It's feel confident because now they could have real conversations in season we reported on our show that we know that they've had meetings, but you can't get extensively into it, have hour-by-hour conversations in season like you can do now. The coaches, by the way, in every building that are not in the playoffs, they get about 2 or 3 weeks off, and then they come back to get ready for the combine and off-season. So now's the time to have these long meetings, and they typically last for hours. And that's what happened over the 2 meetings. The second meeting was not as long for Doug 3 years ago. The first one was longer. So Nick has just got to be smart, and I know for a fact that they prepped him for this. So he's just got to come in with a smart, detailed list that's thought out. Jeffrey wants detail, man. He doesn't want you to, okay, well, you know what? I got this list of 4 guys, and that's it for offensive coordinators. That's not going to work. You better have a long list. Joe Banner told me, I talked to Joe Banner, former Eagles president, earlier this week, but this is incredible. When he interviewed for the Eagles head coaching job, the only one he ever interviewed for, when he was the quarterbacks coach and tight ends coach, you remember he was never a coordinator, he had a list for each position 10 deep, Mike, of possible coaching hires. Think about that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I've questioned about Nick is how deep does the Rolodex go?
Exactly. Great. And that's what I said. Jeff agree with me that you can't come in here with only 2 or 3 by position. I'm not saying he's got to fire the whole staff, but we know the offense was dreadful to close the season. We know that defense was a joke. So you better have a nice you can move a couple guys around and give more responsibility, but you can't do it with 15 guys. There are going to be major changes here. They're going to have a new coordinator.
Right. Well, when you say changes to the coaching staff, let me ask you real quick on the defensive side of the ball. Do you think, hey, I'm not pitching this Fangio defense again. I'm going into Lurie and telling him we are revamping the style of defense we play.
You know, people are saying, "Oh, Fangio is dead." First of all, did they understand how many injuries the Dolphins had? I'm not backing Vic. I don't know the guy, but you got to have better context when you say something doesn't work. People like to make broad statements without context. I kind of laugh when people do that without any information. I talk to the Dolphins a lot. They've had massive injury issues on defense in the second half. Now, it didn't work here. Well, okay. Sean Desai was a young coordinator. Did they hire a guy who had more than 1 year being a defense coordinator? No. They hired a guy who only did it 1 year. And by the way, he probably shouldn't have got the job anyway. So have better context when you say something didn't work. See, the problem with some of the media who don't know any better, where some of the fans who just make broad statements, they don't talk to anybody. Moshe and I are constantly talking to people because I had the same thought. I'm like, is the Fangio thing struggling? No. I talked to enough people in the league who are like, no. Yes, you can nickel. It makes you nickel and dime, but you got to look at the personnel that they're working with. Was it a personnel issue? Was it an injury issue? Or was it bad coaching? See, and Vic's a great coach. By the way, the Fangio defense was pretty good for a lot of the season. It started struggling. Vic started struggling, but he was without a lot of players. Now here, look, down 5 starters, Mike. 2 older corners. I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's like they didn't have good enough talent. Would you not agree?
Oh, listen, the talent on the defense they got, and it brings to a conversation we can have next week. Is this team in rebuild mode now? All of a sudden, you go from Super Bowl up 2 scores at half, 10-1 to now where we're asking, is this a total rebuild to this team? And
great question. Before I get out of here, that has got to come up, Mike. That is an awesome point. That better come up today from Nick. And Nick and Howie, see, Howie's got to be – he can't come in and say, oh, we should have been in the Super Bowl with this roster. Hell no. Come on, man. Do we overrate this roster? Now, I said to start the season they won't be as good record-wise because the roster is not as good. But we also said that the rest of the league is not as good, and that's true. But I know Jeffrey well enough to know that he's not going to say, like, this team should have been better. Of course it should have been better. And it's a coaching issue and a personnel issue.
Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds. Make sure you listen to the podcast and check him out here during Football at 4. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Adam Caplan, co-host of the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can find on any podcasting platform or on their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds.